Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyatela. Great to have you with us here on SABC News. On the show tonight, what consequences does EFF leader Julius Malema's fiery comments last night have on the party as it heads to its elective conference? He came out guns blazing against his former deputy Floyd Shivambu, going as far as launching an attack on leaders in the EFF who appear to be sympathetic towards Shivambu. Dali Mpofu speaks to us tonight. Also on the show, what is the ANC's plan to stabilize metros in Gauteng? The Johannesburg mayor is out, the ANC is back in charge. There are movements in Tshwane that may lead to the mayor there also being pushed out. Gauteng ANC chair and Premier Panyaza Lesufi will speak to us tonight. He'll also talk to us about some of his employment initiatives. And then later, government wants to procure 2,500 megawatt of nuclear power. The last time, former President Jacob Zuma wanted to push the nuclear program through, even though it was clear government couldn't afford it. So can government afford it this time around? Also, seeing that the president has now signed into law the electricity regulation bill, how will that impact on the price of electricity? And when? Electricity Minister Dr. Kgosientsho Ramokgopa is also on Face the Nation tonight. But first, my comment. So, many of us watched last night's address by EFF leader Julius Malema. Some were surprised by his insinuations about Floyd Shivambu's departure from the EFF, especially given how the matter was initially managed last week. But in some corners, this was no surprise. You could argue that this was vintage Malema that we saw last night. But something clearly changed between last week and last night, because last week he was cordial with Floyd Shivambu as he announced that he is leaving the party, and there seemed to be an agreement of sorts that they wouldn't go for personal attacks against each other. Do you remember that?
I stand before you to accept the decision of the Deputy President of the EFF, who has voluntarily resigned his positions and did not renew his membership. When he sent me a letter yesterday, I felt the same pain when I received the news of the passing away of my mother. Because Floyd, to me, is not just a comrade, he's a brother. And he will remain a brother even when he pursues his political career differently. We formed this organization together, and I've told him that resigning from the EFF is equal to resigning from himself, because this is his organization. The constitution of the EFF does not allow people to resign and join other political parties and come back to the party. But I've made this offer to Floyd, that the day you decide to come back, you are more than welcome, because you are not a member, you are a founder of this political party. So you are not our enemy, will never be your enemies, will continue to engage on different political and personal issues.
So that's what Julius Malema said last week. Floyd Shivambu also seemed to be on the same page.
My sincere plea is that in its reflection of the decision that I have taken, the organization should also avoid mischaracterization of an otherwise revolutionary and disciplined decision to not renew membership of the EFF, and the request that I must be released from all areas that I'm deployed on behalf of the EFF. And then say that we have over the years played an important role in shaping the politics of South Africa and the continent, the African continent. We have all played our parts progressively, and I have no doubt that we will continue to do so in our respective different responsibilities.
So all of that happened last week. But then last night, Malema went guns blazing, effectively coming short of accusing Shivambu of betraying him and the EFF for personal gains.
To betray this movement for personal reasons constitute an attack on our movement. Comrades, it is this section of the EFF Constitution that obligates all of us to speak out in private and in public and declare where we stand when the attack of abandoning this movement confronts us.
He even went further to announce that anything that resembles his former deputy will be dismantled.
The GTU shall fall under the office of the president, and all powers that belong to the deputy president will go into the office of the president. And everything else that looks like the former deputy president shall be dismantled in the EFF and then gotten rid of with immediate effect. The GTU and all those who served in the GTU under the deputy president are dissolved. You want to deploy anyone into the government on behalf of the EFF, you shall report to the office of the president. We are taking charge of our organization now. We are tired of entrusting in the hands of wrong people. We have been betrayed for too long. We have been sold out for too long. We have been trusting for too long. We need to take it into our hands and run it ourselves.
And he didn't stop there. He also took a swap at some leaders in the EFF that he believes are quiet on the issue when it comes to what the movement requires. And he says this is a moment that requires them to speak out, and some of them have just been silent.
If there are those amongst us who are to be ashamed to declare where they stand as we defend our movement, I'm willing to give you a simple task and go and look at what those closest to them are saying and how they are behaving. A leader of the EFF who is well known in the EFF, who is very popular in social media, on television, radio and everywhere else. The EFF gets under attack. These leaders do not say anything, but because they don't know where they stand. But there is a practical way to find out where they stand. Just go and look at where their parents stand. Look at where their relatives stand. Look at where their spouses stand. You will know that those closest to them are speaking on their behalf because they whispered into their ears.
All right, that's just context of what happened last night. And I think it's pretty clear who Julius Malema was referring to there, isn't it? It's also clear to me that the shots he fired yesterday towards some within the party have probably everything to do with the upcoming elected conference. He probably wanted those who are likely to challenge his preferred candidates for some positions to know that he's ready for a fight, or maybe to threaten them against standing for those positions, or maybe he's just daring them to bring it on. But the question is, will those people continue with their plans to challenge some positions in the EFF? Right? Will people like Dr. Mzwanele Manyi, for instance, go to conference and contest a leadership position? And what will that mean for the relationship that they have with Julius Malema? Remember what happened to Mandisa Mashego when she stood for the Secretary General position at the 2019 elective conference? Where is she now? So it's clear, at least to me, that Julius Malema has people that he prefers for some positions, which is not unique, by the way, in politics. I mean, often in politics, leaders have their preferred candidates. But it's clear that some in the EFF have their own preference that may contradict Julius Malema's preferences. I mean, there are people already calling on Dr. Ndlozi to rise up and contest the deputy president position. But Julius Malema was telling the ground forces yesterday to be careful of people who want to be supported for leadership when actually they are quiet during a crucial time in the movement. So I think the race for the EFF elective conference is officially on. And judging by what Malema said yesterday, it's going to be a brutal one. One that might weaken the organization or maybe strengthen it. But it looks like it's going to be a bumpy road. Either some leaders in the EFF are going to be brave enough and contest positions, whether or not Malema prefers them to, or they're going to retreat, or maybe even decide to leave the organization. So what is it going to be? We're going to have to wait and see. The next couple of months are going to be really, really interesting. The question we're asking you tonight, though, is what do you make of how Julius Malema addressed Floyd Shivambu's departure from the EFF yesterday? What consequences do you think this will have on the party? Or do you think it was good that he got to be honest about how he really feels about how things have transpired? Please send us a WhatsApp voice note now on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and your surname, and also where you're sending that voice note from. Alternatively, you can send us an act on @FaceTheNation SABC. All right, so we start this conversation with... So we speak now with Dali Mpofu, who is was the first chairperson, in fact, of the Economic Freedom Fighters. And by the way, there's a farewell dinner that is currently underway for their current Chief Justice, that is Raymond Zondo. It's currently taking place. There are a number of people that have been speaking at that gathering, so SABC News is keeping track on that. You'll be finding out more about what would have transpired there on Late Edition, but we're keeping a close eye for when the Chief Justice also begins speaking. But let's continue in studio with Advocate Dali Mpofu. Thank you so much for making time for us.
Good evening. Good to be here as always.
Yes, and what you were asking me earlier, what the listeners maybe didn't hear, is that all of this was happening while I was away.
Yes, I suspect you had something to do with it.
But trust me, even when I was far away, I was glued on my laptop watching the briefing live. Yes. I want to begin in the beginning, Advocate. Maybe let's start there. Were you surprised by Floyd Shivambu's decision last week to say, I'm leaving the organization?
Yeah, surprised is a understatement. Shocked. I think that the organization was generally shocked. You know, I was saying to someone today that, you know, an organization is like a person. It has feelings, yeah. It can be happy, it can be sad, and I think generally we were all shocked and sad last week. And what really happened was that this was obviously unexpected, and it hit us hard, particularly at that level. But much as an organization is like a person, but it also is an organization of many people. Yeah. And so we can't be, you know, wiping our tears for months and months on end. The show must go on. And that was really what most people don't understand, for example, with what the EFF president was saying last week, and what he was saying when he was addressing us as the ground forces.
Yeah, help us understand that. Yeah. What was he trying to say? Because last week the suggestion was, we're not going to be going into personal attacks. We respect the decision. He can go. We're going to focus on the movement. But last night he was quite aggrieved. I mean, he went for the jugular.
Yeah, well, this is politics, you know, it's not for the faint-hearted, as I say. So that's why I'm saying I'm speaking here as a ground force from Ward 73, Johannesburg. So when he was addressing us in that capacity, he obviously had to take the mantle of the leader who must give direction. That's a different thing to addressing, you know, a press conference in some air-conditioned place and in our head office. Because now our task is to make sure that the masses of our people in general, but more importantly, our membership is not left in the lurch wondering what's happening. Direction has to be given. We're not like the other organizations that are, you know, in denial. There's another organization that just lost power, and it's still in denial. We have our hearts to our sleeves, and you correctly say we're honest. So when we were sad last week, we were sad. It was not being put up. And when we are combative now to say let's rebuild, that is also true. That's when it's not like we're acting. All this is part of the bitter struggle for the liberation of our people. And these things happen, you know, I was saying to the president of the EFF last week, this is what happens. You know, you go, you might have 4 or 5 generals, you go into a war. If one of them falls, you can't just say, oh, well, yeah, you obviously have to pause, you know, give a salute and so on, but the war must go on. Yesterday,
as the war goes on, I suppose why some people find problematic some of the things he said is that there are people, even within the EFF, that are pointing fingers at some of the leaders of the EFF. I mean, Julius Malema spoke of people that are quiet. I'm sure you've seen some people thought he was referring to you.
Well, fortunately for you, you are the only one who knows that you had invited me here even before that speech. No, look, the issue, as I was saying, I mean, where we started, we were all shell-shocked. Maybe some people were even confused. But what is worse is that the membership, I mean, people like me, I'm not a leader of the EFF anymore, but because I'm a former chairperson, people will phone all over the country, what's happening, totally confused and so on. So it was important. I thought that the most brilliant thing was to start the process of addressing the membership and showing the posture of the organization. So the issues about the other issues really, I mean, you know, they'll sort themselves out. The important thing is that we have a political program and we have to consolidate the organization. I think that's a blessing in disguise in a way. Again, this is what I was saying to some of our members and leaders. It's a blessing in disguise. It's never good to have a crisis. But if there was ever a good time to have a crisis, it's a good time because we are 3-4 months away from our national conference. So obviously how we come out of that conference, how we consolidate, and we are also about 18 months or whatever to the local government elections. So those are the most important milestones. It's our conference, it's the local government elections, and 2029. And to do that, you don't have to wait for 2029.
You start right now. And we'll talk more about what the plans are. But to be clear, not for a second last night as you were speaking, did you think, is he referring to me? No. Because you didn't say much really on Twitter. No, I didn't, but no, I never thought that. And I've heard so many theories today about he was referring to this one or this one. But, you know, those are people who probably don't know the CIC. If the CIC wanted to talk about me, and I think he did yesterday, he did. He said this happened. You are his witness on something. On something, yes. Okay. And I mean, one of the things was that you are the one that actually negotiated for Floyd Shivambu to get that pathway into the MK party, given your already existing relationship with the former president, Jacob Zuma. How do you respond to an assertion like that? No, we don't have to respond to that. I mean, you know, I've never, one of the things I've seen in the last 5 days is so many people who are experts on us. You know, even now I was coming here, someone was saying, you know, no, this is what Julius is thinking. No, this is what this one is thinking. How do they know how we're thinking? So no, I'm not worried about those kinds of things. That's what happens in politics. There's always be those kinds of rumors. What is crucial is that the organization must position itself within Parliament, outside of Parliament, on the streets of our country as the alternative to the current crisis that we have been placed in by the so-called GNU. And people must listen to that side of the message as well, where we're saying that we're going to focus like never before on crushing this sell-out GNU deal. But obviously, while we're doing that, we have to deal with our internal issues. Now, for an organization, that's not so difficult. It's not like we have to do one thing. We can do all these things all at the same time. What impact do you think all of this is going to have on the EFF, especially after what Julius Malema said last night? What impact are you seeing as the organization? I mean, Julius Malema last night said, if you want to leave, leave now. He was also making suggestions about people who are trending on social media, that some within the EFF want to have him, and I'm talking about Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi here, contest the position of deputy president. And Julius Malema said, be very careful also of people who are propped up also on social media. What impact does this have, especially ahead of the elected conference later this year?
Okay, well, I didn't hear him saying anything about Dr. Mbuyiseni Ndlozi, but the impact that it's going to have on the EFF depends on us. As I say, we can sit and weep for the next 3 months, or we can build our organization and come out stronger from our conference. There's no doubt that this will have an impact on the politics of South Africa. It's not a small story. It's something, as you say, even when you were overseas, you were following it. So, but the question as to whether that impact is going to take us closer or further away from the promised land is in our hands. It's not in the hands necessarily of one person or the president of the EFF or the Secretary General and so on. It's the EFF itself, as it has done since 2013, must decide how it is going to take on the struggle. And my own view is that, as they say, in politics you must never waste a good crisis. So this might well be an event that's going to rejuvenate and in a way also clarify who's who in the zoo. So if there are people who are half here, half there, they must make up their minds.
Where are you? Are you half here, half there? Are you in the party?
No, we are all here. But also people expect us. You see, an organization, a political organization like this is a voluntary organization. So if you come and join the EFF, we don't have an interview and say, why are you joining Clement? So when you leave, we're also not going to have an interview. It's a voluntary association. It's a democratic country. You do what you like. But the most crucial question is what you are asking. What is then the impact on the organization? And we must make sure that we arrest that, and we must make sure that our membership is ready for the real war, which is against the enemies.
To be clear, you are going to be part of that war. You're not going anywhere. You're still very much part of the EFF.
I'm not just part of the EFF. It's as the president was saying, the EFF is us. It's something that we have built from nothing. It's not something that you just wake up one day and walk away.
Which is why Julius Malema feels so betrayed by Floyd Shivambu. I mean, even yesterday he said, even last week he said, this is someone who helped co-found this organization.
Absolutely.
Do you see it in your view as a betrayal when you look at someone like Floyd who helped build this organization, as you say, from nothing? Do you see it as a betrayal? Because Julius Malema last night says this is someone who's gone for his own political gains.
Well, you know what, the relationship particularly between those two is well known. I mean, I represented them in 2012 in the ANC disciplinary hearing. And even then, coming from the Youth League, and as he said last week, it was not just a friendship, it was a brotherhood. So it's almost like, as he said, losing somebody who's close to you, or a divorce, or some other loss of that sort. So those kinds of losses either go with a lot of sadness, which is something we felt, or a feeling of betrayal.
Is that how you feel?
In the sense, well, to the extent that we were not taken into the confidence, I do feel that way. I feel that, and by the way, there's something strange where I've changed about how I feel about it, because last week I was of the view that maybe what the former deputy president should have done is wait until the conference, address all of us and explain himself. But over the weekend I thought about it, and I think I was wrong. He was right to do, the minute he felt that he was no longer with us, he took the right decision to then go.
But he didn't explain why, because even Julius last night says, I asked him, what did I do? No,
he did explain. He didn't, of course, he didn't say, when you're saying that, you are assuming that the problem was with the president of the EFF. He explained it in his letter. He said it's a revolutionary act. But so that's what he explained. But you don't expect us to go to our members and say, oh yeah, we're coming here to talk to you about the Revolutionary Act. We can't, because this is somebody who is now part of the opposition or the competition, so to speak. We're going to have an election in about 2 years' time. We can't be handing out roses to those people that we're going to be contesting against fiercely. As the competition and as opposition, not necessarily as enemies, but this is politics. As I said, it's not a small game.
As the ground forces and as someone who was the first national chair of the EFF, how do you feel about the option that Julius Malema made available to Floyd Shivambu last week? He said it's not in the constitution, but as leader of the party, he's giving him the opportunity. Should he want to come back, that door will remain open for him. I mean, is that in the constitution of the EFF? And if it's not in the constitution of the EFF, why would Julius Malema unilaterally just decide that's the door that he's going to open?
Well, again, it's not a Julius Malema thing. Remember, as I said, we're going into a conference in a few months' time. All of us are giving all sorts of suggestions. This is the season for that. So if, for example, we decide in our conference to change that clause, this is the time for that. I've made a whole lot of proposals, as I do whenever we're going to have a conference. Some make the day, some fail, some get disappointed.
But he didn't say we're going to discuss this with other members. He said, I am making an exception. That sounds like that's not a collective decision.
Well, I mean, you're talking in a press conference. It's not like you're in some doc talking under oath. I'm saying organizationally, the only way that he can achieve that is that you will take it to the organization. Currently, the organization is run by Central Command team. You might take it there, but as I say, fortunately, we have an NPA where those kinds of changes. And I would think that given forget about the Floyd Shivambu thing, given the seismic changes that have happened in the political landscape this year in particular, we are looking forward to a very vibrant conference. And the other thing, the problem is people assume that there's no debate in the EFF, and then they conclude that that is so. There is fierce debate all the time. That's why he made the example where he said, I was there. And
when other EFF leaders wanted the EFF to join the GNU.
Yes, this is true. It happened just now the other day in Kimberley when we were having our 11th anniversary. As usual, when we were together, we talk politics and we fight, quote unquote.
Was Floyd Shivambu one of those that wanted the EFF?
Yes, he was there. He was there. He was part of that debate.
And Julius Malema last night says their reasoning was that, well, the EFF, the DA is going to pull out at some point. And Julius Malema says, what happens if they don't pull out?
No, that's exactly what happened, actually, to cut it short. It was discussions, and this happens all the time, by the way. 2016, we sat for 7 days and debated and boxed each other before we made a decision as to which way we were going to go. But currently, we had this discussion, and we're looking at all those options. And one of the pertinent questions was that, okay, maybe if we had gone in, the DA would have moved out. But what if we had left? And my position was that when those people were saying, well, then we would have stayed, were wrong. Because I said to them, well, what's the difference between that and Matanzima? Because all those people were they were telling us in the 80s and 70s that they are fighting from within, the sellouts that were there, and therefore there would be no difference between us. But the point I'm really making is that those debates are raging on. It's not like there was something strange about
All right, I mean, they're telling me I'm out of time, but just lastly, Advocate, Julius Malema also mentioned that if your branch didn't get a 10% voter share, you won't be allowed to participate in the conference. Is that in the EFF constitution? Has that been discussed even among the ground forces, or is it a decision that he made?
No, that's not how it works. How it works is that when we're going to have a conference, the leadership, remember when we have the previous conference, we basically give the organization to them for the next 5 years. Yeah. So they do the guidelines, they work on the manifestos, they do whatever needs to be done. So the guidelines for the next conference are going to be drafted by that leadership. We can't call a conference so that we can plan for another conference. So that's how it works. So whatever guidelines, they're going to say how many people. For example, they'll decide, are we going to have a conference of 5,000 people or 3,000 people? And that then
But he seems to have decided. Last night he didn't say there's a team that will work on the. He said no branch.
Yes, but what that means, Clement, is that the leadership has made that decision. You see, you guys expect that every time we speak, we must give you a long story. When he announces a decision, it means that is a decision that has been taken at the War Council, at the CCT, or by the people who are doing the guidelines. And we will, if we don't like that, we will say it at Nasrec. Okay,
I'm out of time. Zondo, the Chief Justice, there's a farewell dinner. This is someone that you've also interacted with in your professional space. Any words on, as he bows out of office, he's retiring?
Yeah, goodbye. Yes, but apart from that, it's just like what we're discussing. You know, when you leave, I was watching now, there are people who are making speeches, and when somebody like that leaves here, some of those people are really sad, but some of them are happy. But they are
you sad? Are you happy?
About what? About
him leaving?
No, I'm in between, but I'm happy about the fact that we're going to have some fresh change in that office, and someone who's going to be there for a longer period. But I've known, you know, he was the first person who appointed me as an acting judge back in 2000 when he was at the Labour Court. So from that point of view, he's made his contribution. But it's time to say goodbye.
All right, Advocate, thank you so much for making time for us. All right, that's where we wrap up that conversation. When we come back, we will speak to the Premier of Gauteng, Mzwanele Manyi. Stay with us.